Stensrud, thank you for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
We've talked about this issue before. This is the Healthy Workplace Bill. This is dealing with bullying at the workplace and efforts to address it. And this is something that you've been working on for a while. So tell folks a little bit about the legislation and why you're advocating for it.
For a long time, I'm a Healthy Workplace Bill co-coordinator, and I work with the Workplace Bullying Institute, which is located on the West Coast. The founder is Dr. Gary Namey, and the writer of the bill is Professor David Yamada of Suffolk University in Boston. So I'm intimately involved with them on a day-to-day basis on what they're doing. And the bill has been introduced in 30 states so far,
Wow.
and Rhode Island being the last one. So it was 2015 I first had it introduced by Frank Chacon, and I didn't have a House introducer at that time. But
Okay.
yeah, it's very, very serious business. It's not just, people picking on each other and having a sort of a nasty boss. It's really very malicious and targeted and intense. I went through it myself, and since I've gone through it, people trust to talk to me about it where they wouldn't talk about that to anybody else. And primarily, I think it's a much bigger, more malignant issue than we think, because there's bullying going on right here in the State House, big time. And people know that, and they're afraid to come to legislators who don't believe that they should have it to pass, because there's also huge business lobbying going on and lots of money behind that. So there's a lot going on to try to shut it down. And I'm trying to encourage and challenge these legislators to please do the right thing and go according to their conscience. Do they want their kids or their loved ones going through this? Can they actually think about that instead of the dollars? It's quite similar to the NRA issue, actually. Do you want people to be killed while you're collecting money? Do you want people to die of heart attacks and strokes in the workplace? It does happen. People commit suicide when they lose their livelihood and they lose their family structure because sometimes their partner doesn't understand what they're going through and they can't describe it. So, do you have any more questions?
I've got plenty of questions. You talk about, again, last year having the Senate bill introduced, and we talk a lot about childhood bullying. Do you think it's the stigma, like mental health, that we have to get past to talk about bullying amongst adults?
Well, it's partly that. I'm sure that plays a role in it, but a lot of people come up through bullying in the schoolyard and they survive and they're proud of themselves. They made it. Other people aren't so lucky, and then they sort of scramble. It shouldn't exist, really, because it shuts people down. It doesn't empower them to act the right way. And my issue also with this bill this year is a lot of people were excited. Chacon and O'Brien were excited to take a hold of the bill, and they grabbed it from Senator Calkin and from Moira Walsh, and they're claiming that it had legs now with the Me Too movement. And I'm challenging them. I've been challenging them with back and forth communications to put their money where their mouth is. If they really believe this empowers people and it will help with the Me Too movement, then do it, please.
So talk with us a little bit about the nuts and the bolts of the legislation. If you're a worker in a workplace who's experiencing bullying that's making it adverse conditions for you to be working in, how does this bill address it directly? Is there a place where someone can go to file a complaint? And what are the nuts and bolts that enable someone who's going through something like this to be able to have some recourse?
Well, right now, the only place people can go is to the HR department, and the HR department is absolutely not on anyone's side, no employee's side. So the bill will enable people to file a lawsuit, and that will have legs to empower them to have back pay if they lost their job, to have, care. Sometimes people lose their health, their mental health, to be able to address those issues instead of being thrown out on the street with no job and all this damage. So it does give people, but that's what scares a lot of businesses. They don't realize that if they did the right thing, they wouldn't have the lawsuits and they'd have productive employees instead of, shambling former shadows of themselves trying to do the work. It doesn't make any sense.
And you talk about the national movement for this, and I'm sure you're following it closely on a national level. Have other states embraced this? Have other states passed this?
No, they haven't. They're experiencing the same kind of business lobbying pressure that we are in Rhode Island. I don't want to say that to make it, even more difficult for us to pass the bill, but it's the truth. And so if Rhode Island passed it, it would start a domino effect. It would encourage other people to do the right thing and get empowered employees working in workplaces.
And so you've heard the business side of things. What do you say when you hear from businesses say that, we don't need this red tape, and you've just gone over why you view this as important? What do you respond to them with?
Well, pretty much the same thing that I told you. Why do you want people who are beat up? And then we get into this denial. Nobody's beat up. They're just wimps. They don't stand up for themselves. It's like they don't deserve to have a job if they can't stand up to the pressure of bullying. And that's just ultimately wrong. And we can show that there are companies that do the things the right way. Like if you go to Glassdoor, you can find some of those companies. And they're infinitely more productive, and people want to stay there. You can't get a job there because nobody wants to leave. So it's there right in front of them to see, but they don't want to see it. They don't want to give up the stick as opposed to the carrot model.
Do you think that there's gotten to be some traction with, as you talk about the Me Too movement, with this talk about bullying around the country? Are more people talking about the issue of bullying and as it pertains to the legislation?
Yes, definitely they are. I'm hoping that the Me Too movement and that we tie in that a lot of times it is women who get targeted by other women and by men. And so it's got to have an impact.
Do you expect a lot of folks to come out today?
No.
You're going to be there carrying the flag, so to speak.
Because people are terrified. They're terrified because of what they went through. They don't want to. It's PTSD, pure and simple. It's like a Vietnam vet or a POW. They don't want to confront the people who may harm them more or tell them what a bad employee they are, so never get hired again.
Do you tell your personal story when you testify, or is it too difficult to broach even at this point?
I could, but I think there's more power in me fighting for others. My story is in there, and if people want to hear it, I've sent it. I sent this huge packet to all the members of labor committees that this has gone before. So they know my story. They know lots of stories.
Well, I appreciate your taking the time to come in today. This is the Healthy Workplace Bill hearing this afternoon, getting Jessica Stensrud up here to talk with us a little bit more about this. We'll continue to follow the issue, but I appreciate you taking the time to come on GoLocal Live.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
I appreciate
it. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.